My name is Rachel, and I'm 34 years old. I used to teach middle school English in Tucson, Arizona, living what everyone thought was an enviable life. I had a charming adobe house in the foothills, a career that fulfilled me, and a husband who seemed like the answer to every prayer I'd whispered into the desert night. We'd been married for 18 months. I was 7 months pregnant with our first child, a baby boy we'd already named our little warrior. But what no one knew, what I couldn't even admit to myself until the moment it nearly destroyed us, was that the man who slept beside me each night was hiding something monstrous beneath his perfect exterior. The man whose ring I wore was capable of violence so brutal, so unthinkable, that it would nearly cost both of us our lives. The afternoon his sister came to visit was supposed to be an ordinary Saturday of nursery preparation and baby shower planning. Instead, it became the day I discovered that the person I'd promised forever to was a monster, and that his family had spent years teaching him that women were objects to control. What happened in that sunlit nursery while I was 7 months pregnant, belly round with life, will never leave me. But what happened later at the hospital? What that doctor said that made my husband's face drain of all color? That's what ultimately saved both of our lives. But before I tell you exactly what happened that day, before I describe the feeling of my husband's hands around my throat, before I tell you about the terror and the blood and the moment I was certain I would lose my son, I need to tell you how we got there. I need to take you back to the beginning, back before the mask slipped, back when I still believed in the fairy tale. 3 years before that terrible day, I met Daniel at a summer arts festival in downtown Tucson. He was magnetic, successful, intense. He worked as an architect, made excellent money, and he pursued me with a focus that felt flattering at the time. Looking back now, I can recognize it for what it truly was: obsession masquerading as romance, control disguised as care. But at 31 years old, watching my college friends post engagement photos and baby announcements, Daniel seemed like fate finally smiling on me. He was 39, established, ready for commitment. We dated for 6 months before he proposed on a hiking trail at sunset. And we were married 5 months after that in a small ceremony at a vineyard outside the city. Everyone said we moved too quickly, but it felt right, felt destined. God, how naive I was. How blind to what was standing right in front of me. The first year of our marriage seemed idyllic, or at least that's what I told myself. Daniel was attentive, perhaps excessively so. He always needed to know my exact location, who I was meeting, what time I'd be home. He'd text me constantly throughout my workday, and if I didn't respond within minutes, he'd call repeatedly. If I missed his calls, he'd show up at my school unannounced, claiming he was worried something had happened to me, that he just needed to see that I was safe. My friends thought it was romantic. My father said I'd finally found a man who truly cared. I ignored the tightness in my chest that told me this wasn't devotion, it was surveillance. I convinced myself I was lucky to have someone who loved me so intensely. His sister Veronica was a nightmare from our first meeting. She made it clear immediately that no woman would ever measure up to her standards for her baby brother. She was cold at our wedding, criticized every choice I'd made, from my dress to the menu to the playlist. She made cutting remarks about my weight, my career, my background. Daniel would laugh uncomfortably and tell me that's just Veronica's way. That she means well, that she's protective because their mother died young and she raised him after that. He expected me to simply absorb her cruelty, to smile and accept her abuse because she was his sister. And like a fool, I complied. I swallowed my dignity. I tried to be the perfect sister-in-law, believing that eventually she'd accept me. She never did. When I discovered I was pregnant, everything shifted. I was overjoyed, overwhelmed with happiness. We'd been trying for 4 months, and when I saw those 2 lines on the test, I wept with pure relief and joy. Daniel seemed thrilled at first. He told everyone, posted about it constantly, talked endlessly about becoming a father. But as my body changed, as my belly grew, I noticed a disturbing transformation in him. He became critical, fixated on my appearance. He'd make comments about the weight I was gaining, tell me I needed to be careful not to let myself go completely. He monitored everything I ate, questioned every meal choice, every craving. When I was exhausted from growing a human being inside me, he'd accuse me of being lazy, using pregnancy as an excuse to shirk my responsibilities. The attention that once felt loving became scrutiny that felt suffocating, like hands tightening around my throat even when he wasn't touching me. By 7 months pregnant, I was walking on eggshells in my own home. I was teaching full days, coming home depleted, and still expected to maintain a spotless house, cook elaborate dinners, anticipate Daniel's every need while my body was literally building another life. And I did it. I did all of it because I was terrified of what would happen if I didn't, even though I couldn't have named that fear yet. I just understood that keeping him satisfied kept the peace, and peace was what my baby needed. What I didn't understand was that there was no level of perfection that would ever satisfy him. No amount of submission that would keep the monster at bay. That monster revealed itself the day Veronica announced she was coming to stay with us for a week to help prepare for the baby's arrival. Every instinct in my body screamed resistance, but Daniel insisted. He said Veronica knew best, that she'd helped raise him and understood what babies needed, that I should be grateful for her expertise and guidance. So I agreed. I cleaned every corner of the house, prepared the guest room exactly to her specifications, stocked the kitchen with all her preferred foods. I tried to make everything flawless, so maybe, just maybe, this visit would go smoothly. I should have trusted my instincts. Veronica arrived on a Wednesday afternoon in early October. I'd left school early to be there when she arrived to welcome her properly. The moment she stepped through the door, the criticism began like a script she'd rehearsed. The house was too warm. The guest room wasn't set up correctly. The dinner I'd prepared wasn't what she wanted. I smiled through all of it, pressing my tongue against my teeth so hard I tasted copper. Daniel said nothing in my defense, simply nodded along with his sister, agreeing with her complaints, apologizing to her for my inadequacies. I was 7 months pregnant, exhausted beyond measure, and being treated like hired help in my own home, while my husband remained silent. The next 4 days were psychological torture. Veronica reorganized my kitchen without asking permission, discarded spices and ingredients she considered unnecessary, rearranged everything to suit her preferences. She went through my closet and criticized my maternity clothes, told me I looked frumpy and unkempt, that I needed to make more effort for Daniel's sake. That pregnancy wasn't an excuse to stop caring about my appearance. She criticized every detail of how I decorated the nursery, said the colors were all wrong, that the furniture placement made no sense, said I clearly had no maternal instincts whatsoever. And every single time Daniel agreed with her. Every single time he took her side over mine. I felt like I was disappearing in my own home, like I was being systematically erased. On Saturday afternoon, I came home from running errands to find Veronica in the nursery, and what I saw made my heart stop. She'd completely rearranged everything without asking. The crib was against a different wall. The dresser had been moved. The decorations I'd carefully chosen and lovingly arranged were taken down and replaced with items she'd brought from her own storage, dated things from when she'd raised Daniel decades ago. I stood in the doorway, feeling tears threaten, feeling my baby kick inside me as if he could sense my devastation. This was supposed to be my sacred space to prepare for my son. This was supposed to bring me joy. And this woman had violated it completely, had taken it from me. I took a steadying breath and walked into the room. My voice was shaking, but I kept it measured, kept it respectful. I said, Veronica, I appreciate that you want to help, but I had the nursery arranged the way I wanted it. Could we please change it back? She turned to face me like I'd struck her. Her expression was pure contempt, pure hatred. She said, excuse me? I've raised a child, Rachel. I know what I'm doing. This room was a disaster, and I fixed it. You should be thanking me instead of questioning my judgment. Something inside me fractured in that moment. Maybe it was the pregnancy hormones flooding my system. Maybe it was 4 days of relentless disrespect and criticism. Maybe it was 18 months of swallowing my voice and my dignity. But I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't let her take this last thing from me. I said, my voice firmer now, more certain. This is my baby's nursery. I'm his mother, and I want it the way I arranged it. Please don't go through my things without my permission. It was the most assertive I'd been with her in the entire time I'd known her. It was barely even assertive, really, just the most basic self-advocacy. But to Veronica, it was the ultimate disrespect, the ultimate challenge to her authority. Her face flushed crimson. She started yelling, actually screaming at me in my own home. She said I was ungrateful and spoiled, that I didn't know the first thing about being a mother, that Daniel had made a catastrophic mistake marrying me, that I wasn't good enough for her brother and I never would be, that I was selfish and lazy and it was a miracle Daniel had tolerated me this long. The words kept coming like physical blows, each one designed to cut me down, to make me feel small and worthless. I stood there with my hand protectively on my pregnant belly, tears streaming down my face, unable to process that this was actually happening. I tried to respond, tried to defend myself, but she wouldn't stop talking, wouldn't let me speak. She just kept attacking, kept verbally destroying me. And that's when Daniel came home. I heard the front door open, heard his footsteps approaching down the hallway, and I felt this wave of relief wash over me. Finally, I thought, finally he'll see what she's really like, how she treats me when he's not watching. Finally, he'll defend me, protect me, be my husband. He appeared in the nursery doorway, looked at the scene before him. His sister, red-faced and furious, me crying and trembling with my hand over my belly, and I waited for him to ask what was wrong, to comfort me, to be the partner I needed. Instead, Veronica launched into her version of events before I could speak. She told him I'd been horribly disrespectful to her, that I'd screamed at her for trying to help, that I'd told her she didn't know anything about babies, that I'd been cruel to her all week long. Every word was either a complete fabrication or a grotesque distortion of reality. But Daniel didn't even glance at me. He didn't ask for my side of the story, didn't question anything she said. He just believed her immediately and completely. I watched his face transform, watched the man I married vanish, and something else, something dark and terrifying, take his place. His jaw clenched tight, his hands curled into fists at his sides, and he turned to me with a look of pure rage that made my blood turn to ice in my veins. He said, his voice low and dangerous, barely controlled, "How dare you? How dare you disrespect my sister after everything she's done for us, for you?" I tried to speak, tried to explain what actually happened, but he cut me off viciously. He said, "She came here to help you because God knows you need it, and this is how you treat her. You ungrateful and..." Then he called me something vile, a name so degrading I won't repeat it, a word no husband should ever use for his wife. I was in shock, completely frozen. I couldn't process what was happening, couldn't reconcile this person with the man I'd married. This was Daniel, my husband, the father of my baby, and he was looking at me like he hated me, like I was worthless, like I was something disgusting he'd found on the bottom of his shoe. I said, my voice barely a whisper, barely audible, "Daniel, please, let me explain. That's not what happened at all." But he didn't want to hear it, didn't care about the truth. He took a step toward me, and I instinctively stepped backward. Something in his eyes terrified me in a way I'd never experienced before, made every nerve in my body scream danger. Veronica was just standing there watching it all unfold. And I swear I saw satisfaction in her expression, saw her enjoying this. She wanted this confrontation. She wanted to watch him turn on me. Daniel grabbed my wrist, his fingers digging into my flesh so brutally I knew instantly there would be dark bruises. He jerked me close to his face and said through clenched teeth, "You will apologize to my sister right now. You understand me?" I was shaking uncontrollably, terrified, but I managed to say, "Daniel, you're hurting me. Please let go of my wrist." He didn't release me. His grip tightened even more, and I cried out in pain. And that's when everything spiraled completely out of control. That's when my husband, the man who'd vowed to love and protect me, the father of the child growing inside my body, showed me exactly who he really was beneath the mask. He shoved me violently backward. I stumbled, trying desperately to catch my balance, trying to protect my belly, but I couldn't stay upright. I fell hard, landing on my side, my hands instinctively moving to cradle my stomach to shield my baby from impact. The fall knocked all the air from my lungs. And for a terrifying moment, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the absolute terror of falling while 7 months pregnant. And before I could even process what had just happened, before I could attempt to get up, Daniel was standing over me. He was yelling, screaming things I can barely remember now because all I could focus on was protecting my baby from what was coming. He kicked me. His foot connected with my back, and the pain was blinding, searing. I curled into the tightest ball I could manage, my arms wrapped protectively around my belly, crying and begging him to stop. Pleading with him to think about the baby, about our son. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop, or wouldn't. He kicked me again and again, and then he was kneeling over me and his fists were raining down on me. My shoulders, my arms, my back. I was screaming, begging, pleading for him to stop, to please think about our son, to remember that he loved us. But it was like he couldn't hear me, like he'd become someone else entirely, something inhuman. The pain was everywhere, radiating through every part of my body. But worse than the physical agony was the terror, the absolute horror of knowing that my husband was beating me while I was pregnant with his child. I couldn't protect myself and protect my baby simultaneously. And I was so scared, so utterly terrified that he was going to hurt our son, that his rage was going to kill the life growing inside me. I don't know how long it lasted. It felt like an eternity and like no time at all. But suddenly, he stopped. He stood up, breathing heavily. And I heard Veronica's voice saying something about how I'd brought this on myself. How I needed to learn respect and know my place. I couldn't believe it. She had just watched her brother brutally beat his pregnant wife. And she was justifying it, condoning it, acting like I deserved it. I lay there on the nursery floor, that room I decorated with so much love and hope for my baby, curled protectively around my belly, sobbing and shaking, and bleeding. I felt the wetness between my legs, felt the warm blood soaking into my clothes, and the terror that tore through me in that moment was unlike anything I'd ever experienced in my life. My baby. Something was wrong with my baby. I screamed. I screamed that I was bleeding, that something was terribly wrong, that we needed to call for help immediately. Daniel's face changed again in an instant. The rage evaporated, replaced by fear and panic. Suddenly, he was the concerned husband again, kneeling beside me, trying to touch me. I flinched violently away from him, revolted by his touch, terrified of him. He was saying, "It's okay, it's going to be okay, we'll get you help." Like he wasn't the reason I needed help in the first place. Like he hadn't just beaten his pregnant wife nearly unconscious. My neighbor across the street, Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who'd lived there for decades, had heard the screaming through the open windows. She'd heard me begging for my life, begging for my baby's life, and she'd called for help. I didn't know that at the time. All I knew was that suddenly there were sirens approaching and paramedics were in my house, in my nursery, asking me questions I could barely answer because I was in so much pain, because I was so terrified that my baby was dying inside me. They were professional and efficient and careful, but I could see the deep concern in their eyes when they assessed the blood, when they checked my vital signs, when they saw the marks already forming across my body. They loaded me onto a stretcher, and Daniel was right there beside me, playing the role of the distraught husband perfectly. He was holding my hand, the same hand attached to the wrist he'd nearly broken minutes before, and he was telling the paramedics that I'd fallen, that I'd tripped over something in the nursery and fallen hard. He was lying brazenly, right there with me, bleeding and broken on a stretcher, lying to save himself from consequences. And I was too weak, too scared, too focused on whether my baby was still alive to contradict him in that moment. I just needed to get to the hospital. I needed to know if my son was okay. Nothing else mattered right then. The ambulance ride was a blur of pain and terror and desperate prayer. The paramedics were monitoring my baby's heartbeat, and I kept asking frantically, "Is he okay? Can you hear his heartbeat? Please tell me he's okay." They were kind but evasive, saying things like, "We're getting you to the hospital where they'll take excellent care of you both." That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. They wouldn't give me a direct answer, which meant they were worried, meant the situation was critical. I'd lost significant blood. I was having contractions at 7 months pregnant. Contractions, which could only mean one thing. My body was trying to go into premature labor. Trying to expel my baby who was far too underdeveloped to survive outside my body. The terror of that realization made me sob even harder. I begged God, begged the universe, begged anyone who might be listening to please let my baby be okay. I could survive anything, the pain, the betrayal, the absolute horror of what Daniel had done. But I couldn't survive losing my son. I couldn't bear that. The ambulance doors burst open and I was rushed into the emergency department. Fluorescent lights streaking above me as nurses pushed the gurney through the hallway. Everything felt too bright, too loud, too fast. My vision blurred from pain and panic. Voices swirled around me in medical terms, instructions, questions, but all I could focus on was the rhythmic, terrifying throb in my abdomen and the blood soaking through the sheets. Beneath me, they wheeled me into a trauma bay and the room exploded into motion. A team surrounded my nurses, attaching monitors, a technician starting an IV, another checking the fetal heart rate, a doctor asking questions I could barely comprehend. "Rachel, we need to know what happened. Did you fall? Did you hit anything? Where exactly does it hurt?" I heard Daniel's rehearsed lie spill from his mouth before I could respond. "She fell in the nursery," he said. "She lost her balance. She's been off lately with the pregnancy." His voice trembled just enough to sound believable. He even reached for my hand, performing the role of the terrified husband flawlessly. I pulled my hand away, but the movement was too small. It's too weak for anyone to notice. The doctor, Dr. Carter, a petite woman with quick ties, assessing eyes, looked unconvinced, but she didn't push. Not yet. Instead, she focused on stabilizing me while another nurse monitored the baby's heartbeat. The faint, erratic thump, thump, thump filled the room. "Is he okay?" I asked, my voice breaking. Please tell me he's okay." "We can hear his heartbeat," the nurse said gently. "But it's irregular. We need to stop the contractions before they progress. Just breathe for me." They administered medications to halt the premature labor, something cold and burning traveling up the IV into my veins. Another nurse pressed gauze between my legs to measure the bleeding. The look she exchanged with Dr. Carter made my stomach drop. Something was very wrong. Then another doctor walked in. He looked older, experienced, someone who'd seen everything and wasn't easily fooled. His NAMA tag read Dr. Matthews. He greeted me calmly. Then began his examination, methodical, silent, focusing intently on the injuries covering my body. His eyes cataloged every bruise, every mark, every place Daniel had struck me. He asked how they'd happened. I repeated the lie. "I fell." Silence. Then Dr. Matthews stepped back, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. When he finally spoke, his voice was controlled. But it carried a weight that froze the air in the room. "Sir," Kay said, turning to Daniel, "I want to make you aware of a mandatory hospital protocol. Any pregnant patient who arrives with significant trauma, inconsistent with a normal fall, must have her injuries photographed. Those photographs are automatically uploaded to our domestic violence intervention team and to local law enforcement. This process cannot be stopped or delayed. It is already underway." Daniel's entire face drained of color. His lips parted. He inhaled sharply. His eyes darted to me, then back to the doctor. Something inside me shifted. For the first time, I wasn't the one who was afraid. Dr. Matthews continued. "Now, Mrs. Cooper, I need you to lift your shirt so I can properly document the injuries." I obeyed. When he saw the bruises, deep, swelling fingerprints around my wrist, the blotchy patches across my ribs and back, he exhaled sharply. almost as if the sight physically pained him. Then he asked, quietly but firmly, "These injuries are not consistent with a fall. I've been an emergency physician for 25 years. I know what fall injuries look like. This is different. Someone did this to you? I need to know who." I looked at Daniel. His stare was pure threat. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Fear clamped around my throat. Dr. Matthews understood instantly. "Sir," he said to Daniel, "I need you to step outside. Hospital policy requires privacy during intimate examinations of pregnant patients." Wasn't true. It didn't matter. Daniel hesitated just long enough to send me. A silent warning, then turned and left. The moment the door clicked shut, I broke. Sobs tore from my chest. My body shook violently, pain radiating everywhere. The truth clawing its way out before I could stop it. Dr. Matthews stepped to my side and gently took my hand. "You're safe," he said softly. "You can tell me." I nodded. It was all I could manage. That one nod changed everything. "All right," he said, squeezing my hand with quiet reassurance. "I'm calling security to keep him away from this room. Then I'll notify law enforcement and our domestic violence specialist. But right now, our priority is protecting you and your baby. We're going to do everything in our power to keep you both safe." For the first time since the nightmare began, I believed him. Security arrived within minutes. 2 officers in Navy uniforms who positioned themselves outside my room like immovable sentinels. The moment I saw them, a strange sense of relief washed over me. I hadn't realized until then how deeply my fear of Daniel lived inside my body, how conditioned I'd been to brace for his footsteps, his voice, his anger. "Is he still in the building?" I whispered. Double quotes. "Yes," Dr. Matthews said gently. "But he won't be coming back in here. Security will escort him out once police arrive." The police. The word made my stomach twist. I wasn't ready. I was barely holding myself together. My baby's heartbeat thudded irregularly on the monitor beside me like a frantic, uneven drum. Every contraction rippled through my abdomen like a warning. What if he tries to do something? I whispered. "He won't," Dr. Matthews said with absolute certainty. "I promise you that." Then he stepped aside as a woman entered the room. She wore soft colors and a badge that read Linda Martinez Social Services, DV Specialist. Her expression radiated calm, warmth, safety, everything I had been denied for so long. "Rachel," she said, pulling a chair beside the bed, "I'm here to help you. You're not alone anymore." Something inside me cracked again. But this time it wasn't from fear. It was from relief. Linda took my statements softly, gently pausing when I broke down, giving me tissues, holding my uninjured hand. She never judged, never rushed, never questioned why I'd stayed, why I hadn't told anyone sooner. She understood the fear, the manipulation, the isolation. She'd seen it 100 times before. "You are not the first woman he's done this to," she said quietly. "And I'm certain you won't be the last unless we act now. You did something incredibly brave today." Brave. I didn't feel brave. I felt broken a few minutes later. 2 police officers entered the room, 1 male, 1 female. Their voices were kind but firm as they asked me to recount exactly what had happened. I told them everything. The fight, the screaming, the fall, the kicks, the punches. Veronica watching. The blood, the terror. Every detail, every wound, every moment by the time I finished. Their faces were grim. And then the female officer said words I'll never forget. "We've already detained your husband in the waiting area. He's being taken into custody tonight." My breath caught. He's being arrested. "Yes, based on your injuries alone, this qualifies as aggravated assault on a pregnant woman. That's a felony. And when the baby's condition is fully assessed, additional charges may follow." Charges. Consequences. Accountability. For the first time, I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. But the moment was short-lived, because suddenly A contraction tore through my abdomen so sharply, so violently, that I cried out in pain. The monitor next to me beeped urgently. Dr. Matthews was instantly at my side. Her contractions are intensifying. A nurse said, "We're not stopping them." I felt panic surge again. No, please, not now. He's too early. Dr. Matthews met my eyes with a steady, grounding calm. "Rachel, listen to me. We're taking you to labor and delivery right now. Your baby is still fighting, and so are we. I need you to stay with us. You understand?" Tears blurred my vision. "Yes," I whispered. "Please don't let anything happen to him." "We won't," he said. "We're going to do everything in our power to keep him safe." As they rushed my bed toward the elevator, monitors attached, 4 lines trailing, nurses running beside us, a terrifying truth settled over me, my baby, and I. I'd survived the monster, but now we had to survive the aftermath, and the fight for my son's life was just beginning.